Hello, everyone. Ross MacEwen here from Clan MacEwen, coming to you from a very tranquil Edinburgh evening. You probably hear the birds outside. I wanted to do this video. This will likely be the first in a short series. I'll try and keep it short. That I wanted to do to try and explain and to demonstrate some of the what I think are truly tremendous online research resources for those of you both in Scotland and in the UK and abroad and overseas into looking into family history. Now, family history is probably one of our principal interests. Otherwise, you may not have found our society page. It's certainly a big interest of mine. I would hate to think of the hours that I have spent at the computer trying to decipher old writing. That's part of the fun. So today, I wanted to show a very small amount of what the website Scotland's People is able to offer. It's, in my view, it's certainly for my research, it was the answer to all my prayers. It was the key that unlocked the door in terms of my own research and going back much further into the past, and more importantly, or most importantly, gathering details as you go. So it's one thing to know who and when, but it's something quite else to know where they lived, and maybe with that how they lived, and their occupation and things like that can help conjure up an image of your ancestors and beyond, what kind of lives they live. Sometimes there's a rush to go as far back as you can in a hurry, but sometimes you miss opportunities of really understanding the lives that the people who came before us lived. So I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to turn off my video just for the internet connection and just make sure the video records okay. But I'm going to share my screen first, and hopefully that will work. Share there. I'll switch off my video. So hopefully you can see here that this is scotlandspeople.gov.uk. The web address is just up the top there. And what this video is, website is rather, is an official government website giving a record or access to records held in Scotland. This is only Scotland, not England or beyond. There's a whole other method for that. We're just going to focus on this website just now. And this gives access to the officially held records. So just to prove a point, and this is the homepage, obviously, just to prove a point, just before we go any further, about how accurate it is. I was born in 1988. So if we were to search for me in 1988, births. Oh, there's one Ross MacEwen that's not had much luck. There's me. So even the records show current, up-to-date, living people. So every birth, marriage, and death in Scotland is on this website. Now, there is a rule that if it's 100 years or less, which obviously this is, you cannot just see the record, because that person may still be alive. Data protection laws in Europe and the UK are a lot stricter and a lot more stringent than elsewhere in the world. So if it's 100 years or less, you can't look at the record just on the website. You can order it, and that means speaking to a public authority, and they will do the necessary background checks to make sure that you are entitled to that document. And the way Scotland's People works is that it gives access to records and documents. It also gives access to photographs and valuation rolls, and in some cases coats of arms. But just for today, we're going to just look at some very simple searches that hopefully can translate into something you can use. The website is free to join. However, there is a very slight cost to access the records and provide, and through that access you can download a PDF and you can print it off. It's as good quality as it will ever be, as if you were in the records room yourself. And this is done by credits. You can see up here at the top right hand corner, oh pardon the birds outside, top right hand corner, I have 6 credits remaining, and each image, each record that you wish to access costs you so many number of credits. and I'll explain that maybe in another video, but it's very cheap. I think it even comes down to about 70 pence per record, or maybe £1. So that's a little bit more, over $1 for the item, for the record, for the PDF, and then it's yours forever. And that document might make lots of difference to your research. It might not make any, but it's the trying and the searching that counts. So very, very simple search bar here if you know the time frame, the name, and the forename. But the advanced people search is very interesting, as these are the categories that you are able to search here: births, marriages, divorces, deaths, civil partnerships, and dissolutions. Now, in Scotland, official records, that is government records, have been in place since 1855. So since 1855, the official records for births and marriages and divorces and deaths, etc., have all followed a standard template. They're now typed. They were handwritten. It makes life very, very easy looking at those records to see who's who. And we're going to look at one of them in just a moment. Prior to 1855, there was not a standard template, and it's church records and church registers that you look at. That's a bit more complicated. It's a bit more of an art, and it's not quite as reliable, although all the time church records are being discovered and then digitized. It's always a work in progress. Oh, the other thing I should have said, sorry, is that this website also gives access to census data from 1841, which is when the first census was in Scotland. And a census occurs every 10 years. And this gives a record of who lived where and with whom. It's absolutely fascinating. And I highly, highly recommend it. Valuation rules is a list of owners of buildings, of occupiers. Might not apply to everyone. And the Kirk sessions, I'll talk about them another day. That's a hugely exciting but very detailed method of searching. So we're going to look at just one or two very, very simple searches just to show what they look like. So I'm going to go with marriages first. So, and I'm just going to pick my own ancestors just because they're it's simpler. Now, I have the distinct advantage of all my ancestors being Scottish and being from Scotland, so my searches will be a great deal easier than perhaps some of yours are to begin with, but please don't lose faith. It might be very, very simple for me, and it was in some parts. It doesn't mean it's not going to be easy and doable for you. Research is daunting, it's very academic, it's not always very exciting, but it's often worth it. So my great-great-grandfather's surname was MacEwen, and my great-great-grandmother's surname was Lenny. So say if I knew their surnames, this is the spouse surname and the surname of the person, so that could be either way around, and you might not even know the age range, or the year range, sorry, or even where they are. So one thing to remember here, Scotland is a small country, but it's a small country because it's empty, but geographically it's quite large and it's quite complicated as well. So one thing to keep in mind is that there are lots of different areas. Google Maps is your friend, for sure. So boroughs and counties, it's not just Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Aberdeen. It cuts down into lots of different ones. You have Orkney, Murray. These search items rather can be very, very helpful. But if you don't know which is which, don't limit yourself. Just do all if in doubt. And likewise for the district, a lot of these are the old names for these places. And as churches have evolved and changed and grown and shrunk, sometimes these district names they'll be written on the record when you find it, but it might not help your cause to narrow your search at this early stage. So here I have just literally the name, and I'm not even going to put a year range, and you search for that. Give it a moment, and I'm very, very lucky actually, this is probably not a good example, is that there's just one of each. So Alexander Grieve MacEwen, my great-great-grandfather, married Helen Floyd Lenny in 1902 in Kelvin. Now Kelvin is a part of Glasgow. You have a reference number, and I bought this image earlier using my credits. I think it came to about £1 or maybe just over £1. And but if I hadn't yet, it would say, buy the image with however many credits, and then you press view image, and then this is what you're met with. So this might look like an awful lot of squiggles, and it is, but one thing to keep in mind is that these on each page is likely to be more than one record. So for this instance, like you can very quickly see the MacEwen record is the bottom half of the page, and the top half is someone totally different, nothing to do with me, but this is the original photocopy or scan of this page from the district of Kelvin in the borough of Glasgow. Keep in mind also over time, districts and lines and boundaries will change. So at this time, Kelvin in the borough of Glasgow. Before we delve into the record, you can save it as a PDF. You can print it, zoom in and out, magnify, crop, turn it around, everything you want. But most importantly, you can save this. So you don't need to log into this website every single time you want to see this record. You can download it, send it to family relations or whomever. It's a very, very simple but important aspect of this search is that you can retain that document. So you don't need a web link all the time. And it's not you view 5 times and that's it, you're done. You download it, keep it forever. So looking into this record, the other problem, obviously, these things were handwritten. The scans are not always of high quality. You will get a headache, undoubtedly, from having to squint eyes and try and read some of this stuff. But I chose this record because it's not too illegible, but you just have to know where to map and how to use the record. So we're here in the bottom half of the page, and to read this, 1902, on the 12th day of February, and then it gives the address of the church. Now, Scotland has a very fascinating, complicated, and very complicated religious history. So here it has the address 42, I believe that says Windsor Terrace, Glasgow, which unfortunately now no longer exists. It's apartment buildings. And this will say after bans according to and then there'll be the particular church that those people belong to. So this is the free, I think the belonging to the United Free Church, which is a Presbyterian church that these ancestors of mine belong to. The next column is the names. Alexander G. MacEwen, who worked as a police constable. He was a bachelor at the time, glad to hear it. And he married Helen F, that will be Lenny, who was a domestic servant, which is very, very common for women of every standing, and she's down as a spinster. Just the legal definition, I think that word's become a bit derogatory over time. Give us their ages. I believe that says 24. So it doesn't have their date of birth. So if you're going backwards, and this is maybe the earliest document you've seen, that won't, you could maybe, and you're unsure of which year, that can give you a rough indication of which year to look at. So if you're going backwards, so this is 1902. Alexander was 24 at this time, so and I know he was born in 1877. But if that last bit is a blank, then these ages can help you map the next stage. And then what you would do after this is that you'd search for, in the homepage, Alexander Grieve MacEwen, born, and then you can put the year range, something that fits in with these. So very, very handy column here to map your next steps. Their address, Alexander lived in Lennoxton, which was in Stirlingshire, not a million miles from Kilfinnan, must be said. Helen lived in Glasgow in Scott Street. Then they have the parents of the newlyweds. This could be another very, very important part in your research in mapping that next step. So Alexander's father was James MacEwen. It gives you their occupation. He was a road surfaceman after previously being a farmer. He was deceased by this time, so I know from my research by 1902, James was sadly passed away, and his wife, who's Mary MacEwen, and then married surname or maiden surname, Grieve in this case, but you get both parents, you get the mother's maiden name and the father's profession usually. And again, the same down here for Helen's parents, Thomas Lenny, he was a farmer and married Mary Thomas Tate. They're from Orkney, in the Orkney Isles. Who the witnesses were, this is Helen's brother, but that can also be an interesting piece of your research if there's a sibling or a friend or a colleague who was their witnesses for the wedding in your research, knowing, how did the siblings know each other. You can sometimes paint a picture and who the minister for that church is and where it happened. So from this research, from this just a few lines, a few boxes of information, you can actually gain a huge amount of data: names, years, places, professions, and religion. Sometimes that's an interesting part of the story. Obviously, Scotland is mostly a Presbyterian and Protestant country. We have a very small Roman Catholicism and Anglicanism, called Episcopalianism in Scotland, is a minority Christian denomination, but it's all very, very interesting information. And like I said, you can download this, print it off, put it in your folder, keep it safe, and then come back to it and explore every single part. So Main Street in Lennoxtown, for instance, was the police station. He was a police constable. You start building a picture. And and then to look at the birth record. So if, let's just say I was looking for when Alexander Grieve MacEwen was born, he was 24 in 1902. So I simply go back to the home page and I'll put to the surname and what the record said, which was Alexander G. And we're looking at somewhere from that record from 1876 to 1878. For sake of argument. And when you search, this is the more regular search window you'll find. Again, I've been quite specific with my search, so that it's not surprising that there's not many records, but this was where you'll find your census returns, your valuation rolls, your church records. Thankfully, there's the birth record, which I know I've already searched through this. I know that he was born in Fintry, Stirling, where the family were. So again, viewing the image, exactly the same thing. Looks very similar. So again, you need a keen eye to search through this stuff. Oh, that's a bit too much. And again, this page has 3 records. There's MacEwen there. So the top 2 have nothing at all to do with me. So I can just ignore them and decipher this. And as you'd expect, it has the person's name, where they were born and year. So 1877, I think April 20th, that says at the time, and where, and then the parents, whether they were present, where they were married as well in Scotland. So here, Alexander's parents were James MacEwen, as we saw earlier, and Mary MacEwen, and it tells you where and when they were married, which again can provide that next step in your research. So that says May 1865 in Kippen, which is, again, this part of Stirlingshire. Who was present at the birth? James MacEwen. And interestingly, actually, this section is actually usually hand signed by whoever's in this box or whoever was present. So for a couple of these records, we actually have our family actually have the record of the handwritten signature of our ancestors, which is quite a special, I think, quite a special thing to have. And we've digitally redrawn them just so we can have a record of everyone's signature. It's just one of those things that you collect. So yeah, so this is a birth record. So again, none of them look quite that exciting, but it gives you the information, their full name, where and when they were born, who the parents were, when they were married, and who they were, and if someone was present, usually the father, and who they were. So I'm going to stop there. That's a lot of information for just now. In the next video, we'll probably look at death records, and we're going to go look at some census records, and then eventually we're going to go back beyond 1855 to look at church records, which are, I'm sorry to say, quite difficult on the eyes, but very, very important. But Scotland's people, please look up the website. It's absolutely fantastic. And native Scots like myself and those abroad make enormous use of this website. And if you're ever in Edinburgh, they actually let you go into the records room so you can search these same records yourself. But as you saw, I mean, obviously my searches, I had the information prior, but it doesn't take very long. It's a very addictive website and it's quite cost effective, I think, compared to the kind of information you're going to get. This is actual government held records, the real deal. You don't spend a fortune on this, but even if you wanted to, you could, I suppose. And it has an access and it's always growing all the time. So scotlandspeople.gov.uk. Don't expect quick results because you might be disappointed. But if you're ready for the slog, the hard slog, this is absolutely the website that I would recommend that everyone use. So scotlandspeople.gov.uk, a fantastic website. Totally, I think it probably gained my research another 3 or 4 generations without much difficulty. In fact, you just join the dots and be patient. This is very patient work, very patient research, and it doesn't always reap the results you would like or expect or whatever, but I think it's the most reliable website. It's not a commercial, money-hungry website. It is the government website, and it's just fantastic. Can't say enough good things about it. So I hope that was of some use. any questions at all, please get in touch with us, and we can maybe even do a one-to-one or maybe a wee interactive lecture with this research stuff. But in terms of finding your roots, I think this website is very, very important, but we've got a lot more to cover in the future videos. This was just a starter. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if there's anything that I could do to improve it. Obviously, I'm from Inverness, so I talk quite quickly. So if my accent or my words were not clear, again, please get in touch. But thank you for your time, and good luck with your research.